son and daughter from his wife. I mean, I've lost a friend, but you've lost a husband, a father, a grandfather. I can imagine what that's like, but I know that you bear a sorrow that those of us who were living with Mike and raised by him can only dimly appreciate. When you work at CIA, you kind of build a wall between your personal life and your professional life. It can be hard for your family to understand what you do. So I thought I'd try and give voice to that. But I see a lot of faces here who could also give you their own thoughts. Because when I think of Mike Foley, I think of a lot of words, all of them good. But the ones that strike me most strongly and have been reinforced by the memories that his wonderful family has shared. One is Mike was fierce. He was fierce in his intellect and in his love and in his sense of right and wrong. And the people who worked with him, the people who worked for him, saw that every day. He was an amazing leader, and it was always hidden beneath this veneer of this large human, right? The first time I met him was when he joined our China unit 2 days after the Tiananmen massacre. In hindsight, I was probably a little burned out because when he was introduced to me, I think by Dennis Wilder, my boss, I said, stay out of my way and you won't get hurt. Now, maybe I was suicidal because Mike was 6'4", 250 pounds. I learned later he had been a military police after he survived bubonic plague and had spent the latter part of his military service hunting down draft dodgers and deserters in the wilds of Kentucky and West Virginia. So taking me to the mat in the halls of CIA would have been a minor act of retribution. But he was merciful. The other thing you should know. And for his family to understand what he did at CIA, you know, in general terms, is he came into a unit that had been through fire for about 6 weeks preceding the massacre, and then for another year to follow. And I see people here who know this well, who lived those same period. And Mike came in, he had no China analytic background experience. He'd been an analyst of the Philippines and in counterterrorism and some global issues involving the Soviet Union. And yet, within a matter of a few weeks, he had written the entire chronology of the Tiananmen crisis. And then he became head of our political assessments team, and he rebuilt our entire analytic capability from the devastation of Tiananmen. Because one thing we learned from that crisis is how little we really understood the interior nature of the Chinese Communist Party in that system. And I see faces here that were trained by Mike, that were brought into our work unit, and who rebuilt the agency internally so that for the next 10 or 15 years you could see his legacy in all of the people and in the incredible work that was done based on this new foundation of knowledge. And that gets to the other word I think of when I think of Mike, and I think you've already heard that from his wonderful family. He was really legendary. I see faces who can tell you their own stories of episodes, many of them humorous, most of them though about his formidable intellect. It wasn't just his ability to plumb deeply into the depths and then to write beautifully, and to help us write beautifully. Not always with the kindest encouragement. I mean, when you got a draft back from Mike and you would see his notation on the margins and he would write things like pony, ? Or NSA, which doesn't mean National Security Agency in Mike's reviewing lexicon, and meant no shit analysis. Meaning, you weren't really telling the reader what they needed to know. And the pony ? Was, you just led me through 20 miles of manure, there better be a pony at the other end. Yeah, so this endeared him to many, but not to all. He was also fierce in his defense of his people because he knew who he was developing, he knew their strengths and weaknesses. And, you know, Mike had been, as you've heard his life experiences, he'd seen bad things. And he was very protective of those that he knew merited respect. And I actually think I saved the life of a senior agency manager one day who had crossed one of Mike's rules about treatment of people. I saw Mike coming into our office, and if I had ever seen that look in Mike's face that I knew he was coming to see me, I would have run. So I said, let's take a walk. So Jim Harris, I don't think you're here, but you live today because I made Mike take a walk around the embassy. That's the only time I ever saw him that angry. And for all of the fierceness that he brought to his love of his family and his love of this country and work and the people that he developed and mentored and taught, you all know, what we're here for today. He was my best friend at CIA. And Josh made a reference about video games. Yes, Mike was also, I think many of you don't know this, a level 58 dwarf paladin in World of Warcraft. And his name was Ardwolf, which forced many gamers to look up the term and find out it's a real animal. And so in honor of him, I named my character Gumwolf, because obviously I was going to be toothless compared to this fierce creature. And the thing is, the way he played those games, it was a lot of how I saw him working the agency and the approach I took to life, this vast intellect, as Cora noted and as Melinda noted, this photographic memory. He wasn't really interested in advancing. The goal in a lot of these games is to level up, is to get enough experience points so that you can climb to a higher rank and gain more powers. Mike loved to explore. He would go into these vast created worlds and lead me through and just show me the things that he thought were beautiful or interesting or challenging. And that's the approach he brought to CIA. One of the great things about working with him there is, even after watching the brutality of a regime kill its own people, he taught us we didn't need to hate China. In fact, hate was an impediment, that you needed to understand them, that it was a vast, deep culture operating on the other side of the planet through the first layer of encryption known as Mandarin Chinese. And that you as an analyst had to bring your full skills, your intellect, which were never quite as great as, look, I'll be modest for a moment. I'm a smart person. People have told me I'm one of the smartest people they've ever met. Mike Foley is the smartest person I ever met. And it was behind this kind of gruff, large veneer that you stereotyped and thought he was not sharp. He was the smartest mind in that place. He was unbelievable what he could know and remember. The books, the TV series, the things he recommended to me, that built my own library, and he reminds me in some ways of one of the characters in one of these great books that he gave me. It's a series written by Patrick O'Brien about a Royal Navy commander during the Napoleonic War, Jack Aubrey. And in some ways, Mike reminds me of Jack Aubrey. He's a large, imposing figure that hides a curious kind of delicacy in so many things, and a marvelous intellect, and just the heart of a lion. That fierceness that he brought to love of you guys. I mean, we got to hear about Josh and Melinda the whole time you were growing up, about your wonderful successes, and also about other things. I remember once during a morning, I knew Mike would be leading his morning meeting at his branch because we always met at 9 o'clock. I had my own branch. And I called and told him I was West Springfield High School and that Josh was once again in the office at the principal. Well, he knew my voice, so suddenly I heard this large steps coming down the hall, laughing and swearing simultaneously as he came down to rip me a new one, as he liked to say. So I come here, I still have treasure these memories, so many good times, so much laughter, so much hard work, the best work, but also with sadness, because he was always larger than life, and I guess I hoped he would be larger than death. And in a sense, after hearing the father talk, he is. I mean, the memories of him will resonate